Welcome to Alpha Insights. I'm Niva. Today we're digging into the cannabis sector with Ryan, an investment advisor who follows policy and market flows closely. Remember, if you have questions as we go, you can ask us at stockalpha.ai.
Thanks for having me, Neva. Glad to be here.
Quick housekeeping. U.S. equity markets are closed this Saturday, July 11th, and the last trading day was Friday, July 10th. So when we talk prices or flows, think of them as heading into the long weekend, as of Friday.
Right. That's an important frame for this sector. A lot of the headlines this week changed the narrative, but markets weren't open to trade through them on Saturday.
So, Ryan, big picture first. There seems to be a split between legal and medical momentum on one side and enforcement and federal pressure on the other. What should listeners focus on?
Yeah, that's a good point. On the one hand, you have court developments and clinical studies nudging normalization. On the other hand, you have federal and state enforcement that keeps risk front and center. The interplay between litigation, state policy, and federal rulemaking will drive supply, costs, and retail demand.
Let's get specific. There was a federal appellate judge who publicly questioned the idea that marijuana use automatically equals a firearms risk. Why does that matter?
If appellate courts narrow that old presumption, you could see less enforcement in some areas and clearer privacy protections for users. Practically, that can reduce compliance costs for some companies. Testing and employee policies could get simpler, and it could change how employers and law enforcement approach searches.
That sounds like a potential tailwind if courts move that way. But there's another thread here. Federal pressure on hemp-derived THC products. Walk us through that.
Sure. Former acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf urged Congress to keep a ban on certain hemp THC products, citing public health and foreign supply concerns. In plain terms, regulators are looking closely at things like Delta-8 and similar intoxicating products. If Congress or the agencies tighten rules, manufacturers and retailers could face higher testing and labeling costs, and some product lines might get squeezed.
So, the real question here is, which side wins? Enforcement or expansion?
Exactly. And the answer probably varies by state. California, for example, is showing heavy enforcement. Authorities reported seizing about 63,000 pounds of unregulated cannabis over a 3-month stretch. That kind of seizure highlights the size of the illicit market and why regulators are feeling pressure to act. But at the same time, some local governments are moving to expand legal channels. San Francisco supervisors are set to vote on allowing consumption lounges to serve food and host live entertainment. That could create more venues for licensed sellers and boost retail traffic if it clears final approval.
Interesting. So, enforcement could disrupt margins, while local policy could create new revenue streams.
Right. And that tension is why investors are watching both federal action and local policy calendars closely. In the near term, look for congressional moves on hemp THC rules and any appellate court opinions around marijuana and searches. Those are likely to swing sentiment and flows.
Which companies or names should listeners keep an eye on as proxies for these trends?
Folks are watching the major multi-state operators and the U.S. Cannabis ETF. Names like Tilray, Curaleaf, Green Thumb, and Trulieve represent different exposures to retail demand, medical programs, and regulatory risk. As of Friday, July 10th, flows into the sector were mixed, reflecting uncertainty about policy outcomes.
Got it. Anything on the medical side that might change demand dynamics?
Yes. A new study suggested cannabis may help patients with restless leg syndrome. Clinical research like that builds credibility for medical use and can influence payer conversations and program demand, but commercial adoption will still hinge on regulatory paths and insurance decisions.
Quick reactions.
Interesting.
Right.
Honestly, I was a bit surprised by the size of the seizures.
Before we wrap, give our listeners 2 or 3 quick takeaways.
1. Legal and clinical developments could drive long-term normalization, especially if courts narrow enforcement points. 2. Federal and state enforcement, plus a possible congressional push on hemp THC, raise near-term policy risk that could hit certain product lines and margins. 3. Watch the docket. Appellate rulings, congressional action on hemp-derived THC, local votes like San Francisco's lounge decision, and state licensing updates in places like New York.
Great. And a reminder, our discussion is informational only. This isn't personalized investment advice, and we're not recommending any buy, sell, or hold actions.
Correct. Analysts note these are the catalysts to watch, but everyone should do their own due diligence.
If you have questions about anything we discussed today, you can ask us directly at stockalpha.ai. We answer listener questions live. And for more market insights, head over to stockalpha.ai. Thanks for listening. I'm Niva.